All right, welcome back, everyone. This is another episode of Movie Howl. I'm Joe. I'm here with Ryan, and we are doing a movie that's a little different, I'd say, for us. A movie Ryan recommended to me. He had not seen it. This is one neither one of us had watched yet. Called Nomadland. It is out on Hulu right now, starring Frances McDormand, and she is the only person in it who is of note, really. I think there's one other, an actor who plays somewhat of a love interest in this movie, but I didn't recognize him really from anything else. Certainly not
Dave.
as a big starring name. Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, Dave is he's the only other person that looked familiar, but I couldn't figure out why.
So this movie, I knew nothing about it going in. He said something about it. I happened to look at it on Hulu, and all I saw was a little screen. It's just her picture with the words Nomadland over it. This is a movie about, how do I want to put it? This is a movie about living in a van down by the river.
Yeah, and I have to say, I wanted to wait till we were recording to say it. I'm sorry. I thought this would be a good movie to talk about because it's new. You know, we were just talking about maybe we should do more new stuff that's coming out because the purpose of this, you know, we haven't said it in a while, but the purpose of this is to talk about, you know, old and new, you know, finding stuff you maybe didn't know about. Because there are a lot of movies that I've found over the years that are, you know, movies that you just missed. You know, I've shown Constantine to a couple people who had never seen it, and they're like, how did I miss this?
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of movies like that out there. And yeah, sometimes I don't want just to know how good or bad the newest thing is. I want to know what else is out there. But this looked good. I saw the preview for this. The first movie I've seen in the theater since the whole COVID lockdown was News of the World, which was great. But this was a preview before that, and I thought I would be very interested in it because what it looked like was a woman who loses her job, is encouraged to retire, and decides to live in a van. In van living, you know, that whole like tiny house, van living, stealth camping, all that sort of thing, that's real popular right now. And I'm really interested in it. I've watched a lot of videos about it. I've read a lot of articles about it. It's just really interesting to me, some of these people who are like, yeah, I was working for a doctor's office, or I was working for Amazon, kind of like in this, or whatever it was, and I realized, you know, I'm paying way too much to live in San Francisco or LA or Chicago. So they just kit out a camper van, or really a cargo van, into a camper van and take off. And instead, this was a really slow, thoughtful, well shot, and depressing look into the life of somebody who's kind of lost everything and is trying to desperately hold on to that and her independence. And I don't really feel like it goes anywhere. It doesn't really come to any kind of conclusion that I really like. I know it won some awards. I know it's artsy, but it's not a documentary. It looks like a documentary, but it's not. It's based off a book. And I get the book man this way too, but it would have been more satisfying for it to have some kind of conclusion.
Yes. It's almost like at the end of the old Incredible Hulk show when he's walking away with the backpack. Like that's how it ends every time. Every time he's walking away with the backpack.
Mm-hmm.
This movie, you're right. I guess spoilers abound. Sorry, everyone. That's kind of most often how we do this channel. So, you know, be aware of that. But I don't want to give a bunch away. But this movie ends exactly the way it starts. I'm not sure what the director was thinking about, what he was trying to, I guess, get across with this. I feel like for as far as the main character, Fern, played by Frances McDormand, who gives an okay performance. I don't think any of the performances in this are standout per se. They're okay. I did like how nobody who was in this movie was. We had no Scarlett Johansson, no Ryan Reynolds, no super beautiful Hollywood actors and actresses. These are just regular people, like people that us normal people see and interact with, and possibly are on a daily basis. As I said, didn't know what to expect going into this. I had no idea what it was about. It's a character study about Fern, kind of what she's dealt with and gone through, and how she continues to deal with it. But I mean, yeah, it's slow and it's artsy, and literally nothing nothing changes for this character from point A to point B. Point A, start of the movie, point B, end of the movie. She's exactly the same, so far as I could tell, when the movie started and when the movie ended. And that's
Right.
generally not how you want a character. There's no character development there. You want there to be some sort of character development, and I think more things happened to the ancillary characters, the other characters in this movie. They changed more and had more things happen to them than anything that happened to her. And when there's
Yeah.
no growth for something like this, it's really hard to be attached to that. Like there was, I guess, some struggle, but it's hard to empathize with the struggle that's going on screen when it's either caused by the main character's, I don't want to say poor decisions. Circumstances were kind of bad. Excuse me. It starts out by telling you just a little bit of a text beforehand. There was this town. It was a town that was there because of a quarry that was there, but then that stopped. Huge factory employed most of the town. That's why the town popped up. That factory goes under. The town goes under, and she, you finally get to it in the end. Why I guess she was doing what she was doing, but there were some things that happened throughout it, and I don't know if I really cared about any of it. I was trying to find a reason to care about what I was watching, what the conversations I was listening to, but it just seemed like, back when I was a young person, a teenager, early 20s, and you have some different kind of jobs, trying to figure out what you like, what you want to do, what's okay, what's not. I mean, I worked in a little bit of, either hardware store or like a nursery type retail, that kind of thing. I worked in some factories, just trying to figure out what's what. And a lot of this was reminiscent of stuff like that. And it wasn't fun to watch. Let's put it that way. There was no, even things that sad movies or depressing movies, things that are supposed to be that, they can still be fun to watch if it's interesting, if there's good dialogue, good characters, you can come to care about somebody or something in the movie. I didn't feel that in this at all.
I never got particularly invested in any of the characters. Fern? Is it Fern or Vern? F or V?
Fern.
Fern.
Fern, like the plant.
Okay. Yeah, that's what
The
I
thing
thought. It's
Garfield always ate and destroyed.
She, yeah, like you're saying, she starts and ends in the same place. She loses everything, and she's trying to hold on to some semblance of her former life because she has no other family. And she seems like a relatively outgoing person. Wherever she goes, she seems to make friends. She meets people. The first campsite we see her at, when those people are leaving, they're all driving by and they're waving goodbye to her, shouting her name. When she's working at Amazon, the people there are all talking to her. It's not like she's ostracized or anything. She's immediately sitting in the middle of the group at lunch. When she's standing outside eating chips or, smoking a cigarette or whatever she's doing, taking a break, people walk by and they say hello to her. They say something to her. And then they're telling her, like, well, we're going here. You should come here. Or, Dave at one point is saying, like, well, I'm going to... He finally gives up his nomad life and goes back to be with his son and his family that's there because they're having kids. He's going to be grandfather, so he hangs up the van. And, they even have this moment where she's there. This is way late in the movie, but she's saying, your van has a flat. And he goes, oh, I didn't notice. Like, it's clear that he doesn't care at all about that van anymore. Like, he's like, oh, I didn't notice while he's playing with his grandbaby,
Yeah.
Makes sense.
You're okay. Really jumping ahead with as far as he's concerned.
Well,
But you
what
were
what
right.
I'm getting into is that we're seeing her come across people who want to be part of her life, or they want to help her. They want her to do better than what she's doing. There are a lot of people who live in vans and they make these lifestyle videos about it, and they're fun. They're like, oh, I do this because this way I can live cheaply. I can go up to the mountains and I can ski when it's in season. I can go to the beach and kind of camp out there. I can travel around and visit my family, like whatever it is they need to do. And she's just doing it to live. Somehow she's going place to place, getting jobs. You know, the whole thing at the beginning of this is she's trying to find a job to stay in the area, and they're telling her, like, oh, there aren't really any jobs here. Maybe you should retire early. Then it's job after job that she gets, but she leaves. Mm-hmm. She keeps kind of finding what she's looking for. She's finding people who want to take her in, finding people like her, finding, you know, essentially a new family, a new place to be, new jobs. But she continues to leave. And it's I'm sure there's a point to it, but I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I get that. I think I don't know what the point of that is either. This character, they show her as someone who, from the very opening scene, she's getting some stuff out of a storage unit in this defunct town, I can only imagine, or somewhere close to it. And she pays this gentleman, whoever owns it, whatever she owes him, and then they embrace. Like, it's more than just you own the storage unit and I am paying you as a customer. Like, they know each other.
Yeah.
And that struck me as something that, okay, they're setting up this character as someone who has integrity, is kind of forthright about stuff, that even though she could probably say, hey, I don't have a lot, I can't really afford this right now, and he might let her slide with that kind of thing, because of, you know, knowing somebody that well. She doesn't. Here's your money. I'm going to go. And she takes off. She goes to this seasonal job at Amazon, and that's where you start to meet some of these other characters that are involved in this movie, who I'm not even going to bother to try and remember any of their names. It really wasn't totally worth it. But this one older lady who she becomes friends with talks about going to this event where all these, you know, van living people are going to come congregate, and they're going to there's going to be someone there who is like a guru of the van commune.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be talking, and she doesn't really want to do it. At first she says, well, no, I'm not going to do that. Her friend's like, well, I'm going to draw you a map anyways. And then when she's got no other choice, there's no jobs, there's nothing to do. Like you said, this is maybe early retirement. I don't want to, I just want to work, because she wants to do something. She has nothing else to do, so she goes there, and she gets involved with this group. And that was, in and of itself, kind of interesting how that was going down. And you have this, the older gentleman talking about, you know, what it's like to live in a van, how that lifestyle is different than the corporate, you know, all about the almighty dollar lifestyle that most of us live, you could say. And they do some things there. Well, at her time with this, they talk about stealth parking, how to park in, you know, not in the areas where you're not going to get caught or told to shove off. It's like a van cult, but not in a creepy sexual way.
They reminded me a lot of the nomads in Cyberpunk, actually, because they're like their own society. They're kind of rejecting the corporate world and doing their own thing. But it's depressing because it seems like they're happy with it, but they also have to do it that way. Does that make sense? Like, they're kind of like, well, I can be happy with my lot in life, but I'm doing this because I only get $500 on retirement or whatever. The only young person we see is this kid who looks like he is just walked off the set of Westworld. Like, there's nobody walking around this came out in, 2020? There's nobody walking around who looks like that or talks like that kid.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about? The one that she meets twice?
Uh-huh. She gives him the cigarette. Yeah, absolutely.
He's the only one that seems like he's out there by choice. He's like, I'm just doing my thing, trying to kind of figure out who I am.
Yeah, I feel like some of the other ones, when she was, you know, at this commune thing, that they were sitting around just talking, nighttime, there's a fire going. I feel like one or two of them, it could have been that. Like, there was one lady who talked about, you know, I was working in this corporate world or whatever, and I decided, you know, my neighbor, there's a whole story about her neighbor, and he died without doing what he wanted to do. And so that's what she was out doing. I said, I retired from that, retired as soon as I could, and now I'm out here doing this. So I think some of it was trying to show that some of the people in that weren't doing it because they had no other choice. But there's no question that Fern had no other, I can't say had no other choice.
Right. She was,
I have Yeah, I have a rough time just putting it that way, but that she was choosing to do that. There's a scene later on where a bunch of stuff has happened, nothing of any real consequence as far as a journey of a character is concerned. But her van dies, and it's, sometimes when your car dies, take it to a mechanic, and that's not going to be cheap. And they told her it was going to be like $2,300, and she obviously doesn't have that money just sitting around in an envelope. So she has to kind of suck up her pride and call her sister. So you find out there's some family, and she goes there, and you're led to believe that there's some animosity between not so much the sister and her, but the sister's family and her. And there was a scene with just in that evening of her staying there, that it's just her and her sister, and I thought it was kind of nice. It was a nice scene between Fern, the older sister, and this other girl who was the younger sister. I mean, all adults. Fern's in her 60s.
Yeah, well, at least the actress. The actress is 64, so I would assume Fern's supposed to be a similar age.
Right. And, the younger sister gives her the money, and she's like, I'm going to pay you back. And then they have this nice little talk. But what I got out of that was Fern has always been that way. As soon as she could get out, she wanted to get out, marries some man who she had barely known 3 months, 6 months, whatever it was, not any longer than 6 months. And they go move out in the middle of nowhere. This man, her husband eventually dies. I feel like, I don't know if she was also working there, but we know he worked at this quarry. He loved it, loved the town, loved the people around it.
Yeah, so you watched it. You watched it yesterday. I watched it just a little bit ago. Mm-hmm. I do remember. She said that while they were in that town, she worked in the office there. I think she said she worked in HR for that company for a couple of years. Okay. And then she did some part-time jobs, and she was a substitute teacher and things like that. So she was working on her own, but it definitely gives the impression that husband died a long time ago, because you never see any photos of him. I think there's one point where I guess it's supposed to be a photo of him.
Nope. Yeah, I'm pretty sure her husband was Paul Rudd. I saw that picture. I'm like, is that Paul Rudd? It looks like him in that movie, the movie where he has kind of long hair and he's got a beard. He's like an in-law or something. I never actually saw it, but yeah. Oh, The Idiot Brother, My Idiot Brother. That movie.
Okay, I've not seen
that.
It
just looked like him out of that.
It did kind of remind me of Paul Rudd in Friends when he was dating Phoebe.
Okay.
Because of the long hair. But yeah, it's nowhere, it's not a recent picture. I think it was black and white. He doesn't look anywhere near her age. Anyway, but go on. I don't want to interrupt your flow too much.
No, it's... yeah. In talking with her sister, finding out from her sister that she's always been this type of person. You were brave. Everybody thought you were weird or eccentric. I thought you were brave because you would just go and be unafraid to go out into the world because that was your calling. And so the whole thing, it ends as it starts with her driving in this van. And I know she says that she felt the need to stay in the town because of her husband who died, because he didn't have any family, and so it felt like it was keeping his memory alive or whatever. I think the best way, and this is just my opinion, but the best way to do that, to keep some loved one who has been lost, to keep their memory alive, is to live your life in a way that I think they would be proud of. And maybe he would be proud of what she's doing, living a nomad life. And they refer to her several times as nomads. That this is what they're doing. Her sister relates it to being a pioneer, doing that. But one of the issues I have with that idea, it's not like she's living in this van and she's trying to go see all of the country. She was on like a cycle. Early on in the movie, she's working at Amazon in a seasonal capacity. And towards the end of the movie, she has circled right back to that same place and is doing it all over again. She's now, to her credit, she says she wants to work there again so that she can get the money to pay back her sister. But it's after she works there seasonally, she's in the same RV park. She goes to find all the people again from the van cult, and it's it's like a circular pattern for her of she's just living in her van, and this is what it is. There's nothing to get you invested in why she's doing the things that she's doing. I don't. All I could come up with when I was asking myself why. Why is this character making these decisions? Is it boils down to that's just who she was as a person. She is a nomad. This is what she does, and this is what she's going to do, regardless of what anybody else around her tries to convince her to do, offers help, any of that. This is just going to be her life.
Yeah, and that she's too. So I'll get into my opinion a little more here. She's too stubborn to take help from anybody else or to become part of another family.
Yeah, she's very stubborn.
Yeah, she seems happy with Dave. I think his name is the guy that she worked with who was kind of like, well, do you want to come with me? And she's like, nah. But then she goes with him anyway to that restaurant that they're working at together.
Nah, it'll be fine.
Yeah, and then the son shows up, all that stuff. He goes back, like I had alluded to earlier. He goes to be grandpa, and he's like, you could stay here. And all the family's like, we really like having you here. Like, Dave really likes you, or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
He really likes you. Is his name? Whatever. Doesn't matter. The love interest guy. His family's like, it's really good that you're around.
We say love interest, but it's just like the rest of this movie. It wasn't like any that you see in most Hollywood movies. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but nothing goes anywhere with it.
That's true. Yeah, it's almost more like they're just friends, and he's concerned. Like, hey, live here. If you and I were completely on our own and living in vans, and I found a place, I'd be like, bro, why don't you come stay here? It doesn't make us love interests. So yeah, you're right. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
No, I think that was supposed to be there on his side. I think she just friend zoned him hard.
Yeah. Yeah, she was a little cold, man. He got sick. He was in the hospital. She brought him all this stuff, and he was like, they were kind of having this moment, and she was like, "All right, bye," and just leaves.
Yep. She was also cold when she was in that river taking the bath. That I don't know that we needed a Frances McDormand nude scene, but we got one.
Yep.
And
you definitely got one.
I don't know about you, but I've been in water like that. And I'm not sure where she was that it would have been warm, but it looked like that would have just been unpleasant to lay in there. That a running brook, it did not look warm. That was not. No thanks.
Yeah, maybe not the most comfortable thing in the world. And there were a lot of scenes like that. Since you brought that up, a lot of the runtime of this movie is her doing things and looking sad. She's eating soup in her van, and she's straightening her Happy New Year tiara or whatever. She's sitting there, I don't even know what she's doing. There's a scene, she's doing something in the van, and she stops and puts her hand on her head, like on her face. And then she jumps on that big bucket and has diarrhea. There's a lot of scenes of her just like doing daily stuff that we don't really need to see.
Right.
I get that we're supposed to be seeing how, like, the type of life she's living, but there's a lot of stuff we don't have to see, or shots that linger. We don't need a 4-second shot of just the corner of the windshield where the wiper's kind of clearing it, or a 10-second shot of just the needles on a cactus, which they reused twice, I think.
Yeah, there were a lot of those, and some of the scenery was beautiful. It was really nice. Cinematography was nice, but that being nice doesn't translate to me caring about what happens in the movie.
Yeah. Who? Well, Wes Anderson. Was that? No. Hold on. Let me look this up. Is it? Yeah, it is Wes Anderson. So Wes Anderson directed The Grand Budapest, which we talked about.
Right. Absolutely.
And that was a beautiful movie. And all of the shots had a purpose.
Absolutely.
And in this one, there are a lot of really pretty shots. Like I'm saying, they are set up well, but they're not really necessary. Some of them establish the kind of life she's living, but some of them just are there to be artsy and maybe calming, thought-provoking. Not really sure. This is not a tight movie. We talk about movies being tight. This is not a tight movie.
It is not at all. I was very confused by the scene you mentioned and a scene in the very beginning of the movie. Like I mentioned, the storage unit, she gets some things out. You can tell some of the things are really meaningful to her. Says goodbye to this guy, and she's on the road. And right before the credit, the opening title pops up, Nomadland. It shows her taking a whiz out in the middle of nowhere. Why? What's the point of that? What's the point of her sitting in her van and all of a sudden, obviously, some stomach issues? We've all had that. Oh, I need to hit the head right now, and I get to see her get out her bucket and sit down, and I get to hear the experience of her diarrhea into a 5-gallon bucket. Like, I know during the van cult thing, one of the things they talked about and tried to make light of it a little bit, as you could possibly do in a situation like they were in. If you have bad knees, use this taller bucket. Or if you don't have a lot, if there's some space issues, use this shorter one. And it was one of the things, like changing a tire, what bucket to use, different things that will help improve your van living.
Mm-hmm.
That was enough of that I didn't need to watch her do that. Yeah, to immediately go to being outside with this other character and doing these other things. I don't know what the point was for the director to do that. See, directed by Chloe Zhao.
Yeah, and if it was a documentary, like it looks like it is, it kind of looks like one, apart from that the shots are too perfect. If it was a documentary, they would include moments that seem impactful or give you insight into their life. I guess that's what they're trying to do here. Even though it's a scripted movie, they're throwing in scenes that's like, oh yeah, just in case you want to know what, it looks like when you eat Taco Bell in a van, here you go.
Yeah. So something I'm finding out right now, as I happen to be checking stuff out with this director, she has a post-production credit on The Eternals, this new Marvel property coming out. And I haven't seen any of her other movies, but based on this movie, I don't want any of the style pacing. I don't want that involved at all in my Marvel movies. I'm going to take a hard pass on that.
I don't have a whole lot else to say about the movie. It's a real slow burn. It's really not uplifting at all. At the very end, the whole thing I kind of thought was probably a story about somebody who can't let go of the past. They're too stubborn to accept help from anybody, too afraid of forgetting their old life to start a new one, really. So they're just kind of doing this nomad thing. But then she does have friends. She does have people that she connects with. It seems like she's going to stay with that guy and that family. And then she just takes off anyway. And you're talking about her kind of like being almost seemingly done with that storage unit. And like she's not going to be back for a long time. But at the end of the movie, she's back there. And the guy is asking, like, you don't need any of this stuff? And she's like, nope, I'm done with it. And goes to her old house because she has a conversation with somebody and they talk about the losses that they have and the things that they carry with them.
Right.
And that she spent too much of her life remembering instead of doing something new. But then she goes right back to doing what she was before. But I guess the implication of that is she's going to really embrace her new life and her new opportunities rather than just... She's going to live rather than survive.
I guess that's the implication. I got that too. That she was accepting the loss of her husband, the loss of this town, and that maybe something was going to come of that.
One little detail that kind of bothered me was that car repair. Why did she not have money? Because that scene happened right after I was thinking, like, she should have tons of money. A lot of the people that live this kind of life do it so they don't have to work. They do it because it's inexpensive. Their monthly expenses are really, really low. And she was saying at the beginning that the Amazon job pays well, but she's also working at a restaurant. She's working at a campsite. She has jobs all the time. She's working at like a potato processing place.
Yeah, like that looked like, hard, backbreaking labor. Not something a 60-plus-year-old woman should be out doing.
Yeah,
like I wouldn't want to be out doing that. That looked like I worked a couple days of that and be like, well, it was fun to have while I had a back, but now that I don't have a back anymore, I'm good. I'm good on that. It was really difficult with this movie to not see any character development in the main character.
And then some of the stuff seemed forced, like with this money issue. She was working all these jobs, but she's not spending any money, or it doesn't seem to be. We see nowhere where she's doing any of this stuff. Like the only chair she has is one that somebody gave to her. The paint for her van somebody gave to her. She's going to swap meets, and that's how she gets a can opener. And she's eating canned soup every night and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And if you're working all the time, even minimum wage with almost no bills, and we're assuming that she's not paying for that van. Like the van is paid off.
Right?
What are her expenses? Why did she not have money to do that? And it's not that I'm, that I'm saying like people should have money and they can never be without it or whatever. It's just, it's weird to show that she's hardworking and frugal and eking out a living for herself, but then she can't do this. And the other thing with the scene with the mechanic was where they're telling her, the value of the van's not very much. We would recommend that instead of fixing it, they're willing to like basically just eat the cost of the time they put into looking at the problems and just say, you should probably just go buy something else rather than spend, half of the van's value on a repair. And she starts saying like, well, all the work and money that I put into the build out, that's fine. Leave it there. But then they kind of force this thing where she's like, I live in it. And she looks really ashamed. And I feel like there's not shame in that anymore.
Right,
there are a lot of people who do that. They're like, yeah, I built a custom camper van and I travel the country.
I mean, early on in the movie, she's at like a Walmart or somewhere or some sporting goods store, I don't know. But she meets this family who knew her from the old town where her and her husband lived. This lady and her daughters. Obviously, there's a connection. Like, she knew this lady's mother. They were good friends. So she knew this lady. She tutored one of the daughters who's there, I assume at some point during her substitute teaching time. Which, speaking of that, if you're a substitute teacher, I can't just go be a substitute teacher. You have to have some sort of degree in order to do that. So she does have something that as a substitute teacher, you could turn that into being a teacher or continue to be a substitute teacher, or like you could use that as a regular job source of income kind of thing, wherever you wanted to travel to. Like you could travel around, you could get a hold of school districts as, hey, I'm going to be out that way. Here's my resume. Do you have any need for...
Yeah, I'm available for these months. If you need me, call me.
Right. Like, so there's ability for her to have a more regular income if she would desire it, but it's the matter of she just doesn't. Mm-hmm. She said something to the daughter about, "Oh no, I'm not homeless. I'm just houseless." And she was almost with pride, like, "No, this is what I want to be doing." But then, as you said with the mechanic, "No, I live in my van," and like just own it. That's kind of what this maybe that's what this movie could have been. Had she just really owned it a little bit more, at least maybe coming around to the very end of the movie and like coming to accept it as, this is what I love. I wouldn't trade this for anything. This is how I want to live my life. I got none of that.
Right. The only time she seems happy is when she's adventuring. When she leaves that house, that farmhouse area, and she goes to the ocean and she's running around those cliffs and she's actually like smiling, and when she's floating in that pool or whatever, that in that river, like that's the only time she looks happy, is when she's kind of on her own, doing her own thing, talking to that kid, giving him advice, like telling him a poem, stuff like that. Yeah, that's when she seems happy. That was nice. Yeah. So if it happened to be that's just like, oh, I really like this lifestyle and I don't want to stop that, and it's not just a matter of being stubborn. I mean, she looks so miserable for most of the movie because she doesn't have a home, doesn't have a job, doesn't have a family, whatever. But all of those things are offered to her multiple times, and she won't do it because she can't let go. And I guess that's what's happening at the end, is she's, like I said before, letting go to embrace the new thing. But it's like, give us a little scene of her back at the table with that guy and his family. Or, we have the thing where she's around the fire and they're having their memorial for the one person who passed.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But yeah, there's not much of a conclusion. It's kind of I almost wonder if it's more meant to be just a glimpse into the life of people who are impacted by things like this, by the passing of loved ones, or by, the impact a company can have. Because this is something, I could have done all of this from an economic angle. It's something my girlfriend and I are interested, with her and your girlfriend both being from the same really small town. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's something that we've talked about before, because in this area, the St. Louis metropolitan area, there's not a lot of small, isolated towns like that came up, or at least that are still supported by a single industry. it was farming and whatever, and there was a train depot there, which I think there still is. But it's kind of like this place, this Empire, Nevada. There's a single industry that caused that town to come up, and when that industry goes away, it's bad for all the people. And I think that is relevant to what we're seeing today because of the way we're being impacted by the coronavirus and all the stuff going on. That, you know, I think we're starting to realize, I hope we're starting to realize, that we have too much that rides on our employers, and we have too few employers. You know, one of the things that they're looking at passing right now is the $15 minimum wage, which could be good and could be bad. You know, if you're a small restaurant owner and you're trying to pay all these part-time employees $15 an hour and you have so many, I mean, you know, that may or may not work for you depending on, you know, a small independent restaurant owner could own a place where, you know, it's $50 a plate, or it could be a place where it's $5 a plate and you're just doing burgers and fries in a small town. That's, you know, that's a separate thing. That's one side of the argument, that that's not good. But on the other side is kind of what you're seeing here, that, you know, there is a labor market. The idea is that people work for what they're willing to accept. But when you have a place where there is no choice, I mean, there's nothing they can do. It's not like you can, I mean, you could say move out of that town, just get away from there, but you can't always. And I think that's part of her problem, is that in this movie, because the company went away and the town became a ghost town, she can't sell that house. They can't get any value from that. So she has none of that money to fall back on. And there are a lot of people in a similar situation. You know, if they're in a place that's only supported by a meat packing plant or something like that, that may be their only option. Or if you're in a town where Walmart or Amazon are the biggest employers, there's not a lot of power for the employees to try to find someplace better. But if you're in a town with, you know, a town of, I don't know, however many thousands of people, but you had a couple hundred employers, then you have a lot of choice to move around and you have a competitive labor market. So maybe that's the kind of statement they're trying to make. Like, look at the life people are choosing to live as opposed to being under the thumb of a single company or dependent on a single company. I mean, we're seeing people now, if you don't have a job, you don't have health care, typically. But there's so much riding on your employment and riding on the way things are now, and this might just be a glimpse into the lives of people who are choosing to reject that system, like the nomads in Cyberpunk.
I mean, it could be that. If that's what they were going for, I didn't really feel like they went about showing it in the best way. I mean, I understand how you can take that from it if you want to look for it, but my biggest takeaway is there's a bunch of people living in a van down by the river because that's what they want to do. Not because they have to. Some of them because they have to, but because that's what they are choosing to do. They watched too much Chris Farley. They took it to heart when they were little, and now they grew up, and this is what they want to do.
Or they're forced to, and they're trying to band together. So, yeah, there are moments where it's kind of heartwarming. They look out for each other, but for the most part, it doesn't have a clear moral. There's no obvious message that it's trying to get across. So I'm wondering if the book was more, I don't know, if the book was better at telling a story that made sense or that gave some kind of message, or that, I don't know, just had something to it that would make it more worth watching than just kind of the spectacle of it, the pretty photography and looking at the lifestyle of these people who live in such an unusual way.
Yeah, I mean, they showed a little bit of that, and it just, I don't know, if it comes down to it, if you're asking me the final question, watch or pass, oh man, I got to pass on this one. You really have to want to watch something that, all right, it's like saying, I'm going to eat a burger. It looks like it could be good, but it's going to taste like water. You don't get anything out of it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely a pass for me as well. I wanted to like it. I'm trying really hard to find something in it. You know, I can find kind of political messages about the dangers of our current systems and, you know, worshiping the almighty dollar, or however the guy put it. But it doesn't really seem to be about that. It doesn't really seem... I would say it's more about somebody trying to move past something if we saw her do that. Other than just returning home and kind of looking around and then being like, all right, I think I'm done with this. I would rather see the movie that comes after that. Like, hey, I think I'm finally done with this small town. You know, I can move on. I can remember what I had, but I can live my own life. And then that's what I thought we were going to see. That's genuinely what I thought the movie was going to be. Somebody starting this unconventional lifestyle and it being fun and rewarding, because that's kind of how the trailer made it look. Like, this person was going to encounter all these people and build this life and have this family. I mean, in the trailer that I saw, the first one, the guy was talking about, you know, nobody's ever really gone. Like, you never say goodbye. You see them all again. You know, you're going to go someplace else. You're going to run into the same people. Like,
See you on down the road.
yeah, that sounds kind of fun. Like, you have like a family. You go this place, you see these people, you know. You go another place, you see other people, you know. That sounds cool. But the movie was just a real bummer.
It was. It was not uplifting. It was not fun to watch. I wasn't hooked in by any of the performances.
Yeah,
It
my
was
girlfriend started to watch it with me. She was like, "Yeah, that looked interesting. You know, I really like tiny houses. I really like the van life stuff. Let's watch this." So I think we got maybe 10 minutes into it, and she was like, "Yep, I'm done with this. Like, you can keep watching it, but I'm gonna go do some other stuff." She grabbed her Switch and went and played that.
My girlfriend as well. Also, she had already watched it when I said something about watching a movie with her. I was like, "What movie?" She was like, "Oh yeah, I already watched that." She hated it. And I said, "Well, maybe it's after I got done watching it. Well, maybe it's. I feel like it's a journey, not destination kind of movie." And she's like, "No, I don't want that. I want to see somebody get where they're going." And that didn't happen in this movie. No, there was no end game to it. I don't understand. I just didn't walk away really understanding what the director was trying to say. And that's not the way it should be at the end of your movie. I mean, maybe you'll have some questions or, I don't know, whatever, trying to figure out what they meant, what they wanted you to think. I got none of that from this movie. So sorry, everyone. Sorry, Howligans. This was not one of our most. This is not going to be on our top 10 list. Sorry about that. It might go the other direction. We'll have to see how it goes.
I think this is our first pass where both of us said pass. You know, most of the time we give it a tentative watch. But I mean, if you're into artsy sort of stuff that wins awards at film festivals for the cinematography and I don't know. I don't know why you would want to watch this and put yourself through it. I don't know. I guess maybe it's just so far outside my wheelhouse. I want to, you know, I'm sure there are people who watched it who are like, this is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, and it's such a great experience, and it tells such a life-affirming story, but not to me.
I did feel
stubborn
a little more
old lady.
life-affirmed. I felt a little bit more life-affirmed when she shit in the bucket. So maybe we're just looking at it from the wrong lens.
Yeah,
But
it's a
I
stubborn.
don't know.
It's a stubborn widow living in a van, shitting in a bucket, working job she seems good at, but doesn't really seem to like, with lots of people who like her, want to help her settle down, but she's too stubborn, proud, whatever, to take that help. But she just never seems happy. I guess that's the thing. It's not somebody saying like, no, I don't want to do that because I love living like this. Because she doesn't seem to love anything.
Nope.
She never seems happy apart from those couple moments where she's on her own, kind of in wilderness.
Well, all right, everyone. I think we've said all we can say about this movie. I just want to put it behind me. I don't ever want to think about it again.
And I think
if you
for
have
this
a free night, don't waste your free night with this.
Yeah, I think because I made us watch this, you should probably choose the next couple movies. I think I need a timeout. I don't trust myself again.
No, it's not. That's not fair, because the editors who put that trailer together, they got you, and the people who do that shit are really good at that.
That's true. I did go to see Sweeney
got.
Todd. Yeah, I did go to see Sweeney Todd without knowing it was a musical, because there was no music in the trailers at all.
Yeah, I remember when I found out years later, somebody said the musical and then said Sweeney Todd. I'm like, did they make some? Wait, Johnny Depp like that? Like, yeah. I said that's a musical. Same kind of thing. This was not as advertised. So I'm not blaming you too hard for that.
Yeah, that was an experience, sitting down in the theater with some of my friends. Like, all right, we're gonna watch a movie about Johnny Depp being a serial killer in like Victorian London. This should be great. And then they started singing, and I was like, oh no, I don't think this is not what I signed up for at all.
Yeah, this movie was kind of like that. This was not. I wouldn't say not what I signed up for, but you know what? We did sign up for this. When we decided to do this podcast with all you wonderful people listening to us, we signed up for this. So we're going to keep bringing you stuff. Hopefully, it'll be better than this movie, than other movies that are like this. But sometimes we're going to find these. We're going to be like, hey, that looks interesting. And it's not going to be. And that's just the way it is. Sometimes you watch it to see, and it isn't your cup of tea. It's not exactly what I want to be. I'm not going back to it. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to go out of my way to watch this again. Whereas maybe if I watched Tenet a couple more times, I'd really catch some of the nuanced stuff that Nolan was trying to do. But this, I'd watch Tenet 10 more times before I watch this movie again once.
Yep.
So thanks once again, everybody. That was an experience that hopefully we can spare you from. If you'd like, please hit us up on all of our socials. Ryan, what are those?
Oh yeah, a whole whopping 2 socials. We've got Twitter @MovieHowl, and we have an email at moviehowl@gmail.com.
That's it. I think that's it for us. I'm Joe.
I'm Ryan.
And we're done. We're out. Thank God it's over.
I'm gonna go back to my van. See ya.